Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we live, create, and learn on today, paying respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We are here with Elaine Li today. Hello, Elaine. Sorry. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Very excited to have you here for this fun one and done stream. So before we get into it, how about a little bit of an introduction? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Elaine, and I am a freelance photographer from Hong Kong, now based in Sydney. I've been here for about 3 years now. When I say freelance photographer, photography is basically my hobby. I've been taking photos since I was in like primary school, and Instagram came along, and because of the social media platform, it kind of turned into a side hustle. So yeah, and my full-time job is actually in advertising as an art director.
Fantastic. It's lovely how those worlds sort of collide and compare. And I mean, we're just talking before the stream how explaining what we do to friends and family or parents is always an interesting one. And art director is probably one of the most challenging jobs to explain.
Sorry, do you mind giving me 1 minute?
Absolutely.
My dog needs to go potty and I need to open the door for her.
That's totally fine. While we do that, let's see. Hello to everyone in the chat. So we have Steve, as always, and Flynn taking care of us today in the chat. And we're back. So before we continue, I just want to give a heads up to anyone. If you have any questions for Elaine today as we go through the stream, please feel free to post them in the chat and we will get to as many of them as we can. But without any further ado, should we check out your website?
Sure. So I guess in terms of my creative endeavors, there's kind of two parts. There's art direction and photography. So with art direction, I work in an advertising agency where I guess my title is an art director, but I do more than art direction. You know, I work with my copywriter partner to come up with ideas for campaigns, whether it's through a TBC, a social media campaign, or, just a simple banner ad. I've worked on brands like Coors, Red Cross, KFC, Volkswagen, McDonald's, what else? Nike. And as an art director, you get to collaborate with really talented people, whether it's like directors or photographers, illustrators, and everything. So that's kind of my day job. And I love doing it. It's super fun coming up with ideas and collaborating with people. And then on the other hand, I do photography. And like I said before, as a hobby, I guess I shoot mainly street, cityscape, landscape, travel, dabble in a bit of drone as well. And I used to do this thing called urban exploration, which is where, kind of do, somewhat dangerous things like climbing onto rooftops and going down into like subway stations and stuff. But this was back in Hong Kong, which, obviously has like a lot of high rises. And I love traveling. And, I'm really thankful to be in Australia where we can still travel domestically. So these are just some of my photos from around the world. My favorite place to shoot is Hong Kong. That's where I'm from. And that's, I find Hong Kong to be a very energetic and very vibrant place. And there's just so much to capture. So these are just some of the examples. These are some photos I've taken in China. And
absolutely beautiful. Just checking in on chat, the whole the urban climate exploration stuff. That's pretty full on, pretty crazy. How did you get into that?
Shouldn't have started with that. So I guess this was like back in 20, maybe 15 or 16, or maybe later, I can't remember. Time doesn't make sense anymore after COVID. And back then, because I was in Hong Kong, I was taking a lot of photos of my hometown, but over time, when you shoot quite a lot, you kind of run out of interesting, I guess, perspectives and angles. So I came across a few photographers' work where they specialize in rooftoping, and I thought that was really amazing because I've never seen the city from that angle and that perspective. So I started doing the same, and that kind of just opened almost like a whole new world, almost like a really niche style of photography for me. And then a few years later, drone came along. So I stopped because drone is just a lot easier. You just make the machine do the work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve was just saying in the chat that Unreal, you don't own a helicopter, but that's the benefit of a drone. You can pretend that you own a helicopter and take absolutely incredible photos.
Thank you. So yeah, it's Japan. And recently, because I've moved to Australia, I've started dabbling more into, a little bit like nature photography as well. And that's kind of still something I'm exploring. And some more stuff from Europe and Finland. It can go on and on.
Oh, wonderful. It's incredible seeing all this travel photography and being able to, now follow and see photos from people from all over the world. You can really travel anywhere thanks to wonderful photographers like yourself.
Yeah. And I can show you guys a bit of my street photos as well, since we're talking about, street photography today.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's go.
So whenever I do street photography, I kind of like having some sort of like human elements involved, because I feel like that's kind of what gives the picture depth and what gives the photo a bit of emotion, and you almost like connect and relate to the photo a little more than just a regular beautiful cityscape, kind of like these are kind of nice artsy looking cityscapes. But for me, street photography has always just been close to my heart because they just feel like more unique moments that you're capturing. So yeah, a lot of these examples are from Hong Kong, and you can see that with all of these, I always have sort of like a main subject, as like a focal point, and then using the city as almost like a background, as like a canvas for the photos.
That's beautiful. And I'm sure having a character, or whether that's a human or a dog, as I saw in one of the photos, really helps with the scale of the photo as well. And that's, I'm sure, something that we'll talk about more in a little bit. But a question that I have is, why street photography? Because obviously photography itself became a little bit of a side hustle and something to, I guess, complement your creativity outside of work.
Yeah.
But then going further into that, what made you feel so drawn towards street photography?
I think it's because, I guess, like street photography, like with photography in general, right? You have to be quite observant. You have to, find moments. You have to kind of, notice, beautiful light. You have to notice the beauty around you. But that's almost, street photography almost expects more of that, because you're trying to capture a moment while making sure the photo looks aesthetically pleasing. So that's kind of quite a challenge. And I think it's always extra rewarding when you are able to capture like a perfect moment like that. So for example, this photo I personally really love. I don't think anyone else really liked this photo. I posted on Instagram. It didn't get much, response, but I love this one just because, like, you're focusing on the girl on the phone, and yet in the reflection of the bus, you see 7-Eleven. So, like, in a way, it's almost like, oh, we're on the phone 24/7 sort of thing.
Ooh, yes.
Oh.
I love that. I was like, oh, I mean, the photo's fantastic, but I'm sure there's a story behind it. And then it just like inception moment, like
That's just my
out
own,
of this world.
that's my own take on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, shooting street on rainy days is especially amazing. It just looks cinematic, and again, just capturing a moment that just never happens again. I feel like it's just something really fun.
Absolutely. It's always intriguing to see, because obviously photography, and I think almost especially street photography, you really see the world or the place in the photographer's eyes, or through them rather. So, two people could be walking down the same street, but they take entirely different photos. Exactly. And that's always so exciting.
Yeah. And I think that's also another reason, because with social media, right, and with photography being so much more accessible than before, a lot of everyone kind of just takes really similar photos, right? Like if you go to a tourist destination, you shoot the skyline is not going to change. The only thing that changes is the weather, or perhaps people around it. And I think that's also another reason why I like street photography, is because it's really unique, and you literally cannot, I guess, duplicate that moment. Yeah, it's all about the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Speaking of being in the moment, we are indeed live. So I'm going to check in on chat real quick, and we have 2 questions. If you want to take 2 questions, then maybe we can dive deeper into your photography. So first question, what is your favorite country to shoot in from Flynn?
I feel like just anywhere in Asia, to be honest. I know it's really broad, but I don't know. Hong Kong, it specifically is very close to my heart, right? Because it's home. So for me, shooting there is not just about capturing photos, but it also has like a deeper meaning for myself. Like it's almost like I feel more connected to photos I've taken in Hong Kong than anywhere else. So yeah, and I mean, look, Australia has amazing landscapes. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I'm kind of still going through this process of, learning how to shoot nature photography, being really patient, which nature photography requires, and weather conditions and everything. So yeah, I'd say Hong Kong and kind of Asia in general.
No, that's it's a very good answer, because I feel well, not just because, but I feel very similarly, being a Swedish person living in Australia. It's, Australia is great and wonderful and beautiful and everything, but there is something special, about your hometown or your home country. Going for one more question, I think, before we dive in, 1 or 2, from Ben Li. Shout out to Ben in the
hi Ben
in the chat. Which is your favorite street photo you've taken, and why? Do you have one?
I think I did. Can't quite remember. I don't think it's on my website. I need to update my website, don't I? Look, this is not really street, but oh wait, no, it is. Let's see. I remember really liking this photo. I remember this was at a really late night event for somewhere in the south of Hong Kong, and it was a dragon dance. There was a dragon dance, and it was like 10 or 11 p.m. And I remember I just love how this kid is in his PJs, probably was going to bed, and yet his dad dragged him out or something, and he's just like admiring, all the festivities. And I just love how, the kind of color, the signage in the background just, gives it a bit of context.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, that's so delightful.
Oh, thanks. And this isn't really street, but this is kind of more of a portrait that I've taken with the model. But I've always really loved this shot that could pass as street. I don't know.
Mm.
But yeah, when I shot this with her, I was just like, oh my God, like I love this shot. You know, it's kind of just everything I've kind of hoped for a really kind of cinematic look, almost looking like a painting. So this is kind of my other my other favorite photo that I've taken.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can see why it's one of your favorites. It's wonderful. But taking the note of, developing stories and figuring out what is the story behind the image, how about we dive a bit deeper into some of your photographs and kind of see where, when choosing a photo, what becomes the right photo
Yeah.
and kind of your editing process.
And before we dive into it,
Is it dog time? Yes! Oh, I'm so glad.
A dog called Toki. She's been chewing my vacuum cleaner down there, so I'm just gonna leave her here until
Oh
she.
no, but also, oh yes, for us, we love a guest with a pet. Makes our day.
All right.
Let's dive in.
Let us dive in. So I guess just to give you a little bit of insight into my process, I've kind of shortlisted a few folders of pictures here to kind of take you guys through. So first off, it's a set of photos I've taken in Japan, I think in Shibuya. And it's basically this street full of yakitori stores where, you've got these amazing, again, quite cinematic looks with, going through the window, peeking through the window with like these smoke from the yakitori. And you can just see all these chefs being really focused in their craft. And I think the thing with street photography is like you always end up just shooting, I don't know, like 50 or 60 photos just to capture one really amazing shot. And just to kind of show you guys all the stuff I've taken. So first off, we noticed this younger guy with the face mask kind of cooking. And then as we were walking down the street, we noticed this other older guy right here who, as I said, it's really hard to get a nice photo with all the smoke, but it's worth it. Who, if you can tell, has like these amazing eyebrows, which is
Absolutely
just like
incredible.
super long, and it's just like, oh my God, like I've never seen someone with that like eyebrows like that. So like I was really captivated by that and the whole scene and just him doing his thing. So I just stayed there for about like 10-15 minutes, just like capturing him, just trying to get the perfect shot where you've got the smoke without covering his face too much, tried different angles. I was waiting for him to kind of look up to the camera even, but he was so into making the food that he never did. And I guess like this is kind of an example of like sometimes you go out to shoot street and you might not end up with anything that you like. So this is kind of an example of that, right? We just went through about 40 photos. As you can see, I took about 30 of this guy, probably more. I've deleted a lot of the ones that just really didn't work, but still something like this might have worked, but for me, it's just a little off simply because when you look at the photo, you can't really tell what I'm trying to say, I guess, like without me pointing out that, yeah, he has like these amazing eyebrows, you almost miss it. So
I don't know. Those eyebrows would be pretty hard to miss, I think.
Are they? I don't know. Like they are hard to miss, but I don't know. There's just something about the shot that just wasn't quite there for me, and so that's kind of why I still haven't posted any shots from this this set yet. But yeah, that's kind of just, I guess, like one of the process is just to shoot a bunch once you find something you like. And then another folder I just wanted to take you through is like this folder or this set from Nepal. So this is at a place called Bodhanath, which essentially has like this dome structure in the middle, and then people kind of walk around it and spin the prayer wheels, and it's really religious and holy site. And the thing with this place is that, you could just take a photo like this, which, in itself, the architecture looks amazing. But every time I go shoot on the street, I try to find, I guess, more interesting angles, whether it's like through a reflection, through a mirror, or maybe you have some sort of elements in the foreground. So, like I said, found this kind of cool window that's kind of cool, but I feel like you can't really tell what it is.
Mm.
And then I started looking at other angles, like, maybe shooting through these poles of prayer flags, but then it just looked a bit busy. Kept walking around, and finally I remember finding this spot where there's just a ton of pigeons and everyone's just like feeding the pigeons there. And I thought, oh my God, this actually gives the photo so much energy, so much movement, and it just makes it a lot more interesting, and it gives it a little almost like a cultural context to it in a weird way. So once I found the angle that I like and found it interesting, I start, just shooting a bunch of stuff. I was kind of waiting for the people in the background to leave the scene. I was waiting for that perfect pigeon moment. Where
Hashtag perfect pigeon moment. I think that's wonderful. I mean, that's the quote of the day, I think.
Yeah, I was looking for the perfect pigeon moment where, you can still see the structure in the background, but the pigeons almost create like a frame around it. So I remember, I think it was this shot and this shot that I ended up quite like. And, once I find something I like, I just, rate it as a 5 just to, just to remember. Got like short memory loss.
10 out of 10.
This was kind of nice as well. There's people in it, but this was just a bit busy. So it's always kind of about finding the balance between a photo that might look a bit plain and boring versus a photo that might be a little just too overwhelming.
Do you have any sort of guiding principles for yourself, whether it's, this photo can have X number of components in it, or if the main focus is this, I'll allow this percentage of the photo to be not what the main focus is about?
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like an intuition thing, I think. I think for me is you want the photo to you want people like, because I upload a lot of my photos on Instagram, right? And on Instagram, everyone has like really short attention span. And everyone kind of just scrolls. And it might be because I work in advertising. For me, it's always just about capturing people's attention just right like the second they look at it. I don't know, it's just me. But for me, it's people have to kind of understand and be able to digest the photo the moment they see it. Whereas like this shot, for example, with the girl, there's just too much to unpack. Like you're trying to see that structure in the background, but at the same time, looking at this moment of the girl chasing the pigeons, it's almost too much to filter through. It's a weird thing to explain. I've never explained my photos in this way.
I mean, I personally understand it, and I think chat does too. And I'm sure if there's anything that we're talking about here, chat, that you don't quite catch on to or understand, please feel free to obviously send your questions through on the chat in behance.net/live. Because the one disclaimer that we often get on the stream is guests saying, well, this is the way that I do it, and maybe you don't approach it this way, but this is just my way of doing it. And I think anyone sort of any creative explaining their process is always going to have that disclaimer of, well, this is how it makes sense in my head, but it might not make sense for you, but I hope it does.
It might not make sense to anyone else, which is fine. That's just the way I do it.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of a bit about my selection process, and there were, I think, 2 more folders I wanted to take you guys through before I actually get into the actual editing. So one is this set that I've taken in Gold Coast, and then another is a set that I've taken in Hong Kong. These two are very different, I guess, style. The one in Gold Coast is very much quite nature driven. It's more, it's a lot of things that you can control, like, the wave, the height of the wave, the weather. Whereas in Hong Kong, this is a very, city, it's night photography. So the way I
Mm.
approach these two kind of subjects is very, very different. So first off, just quickly, the Gold Coast one, um, with this scene and this shot, I was very clear as to what I wanted to capture. I used a 70 to 200 lens, and I wanted to get kind of the layer of like the Gold Coast skyline with like the waves in the front. So, once I got there, I started shooting. I started kind of like looking at, again, having more elements in the foreground and background, creating that layer, like I said before, adding some sort of human element. And, I shot a few of these, kind of just didn't work that well. It's kind of like, okay, the people are a little too big. And then like those fishing poles just, I'm a little OCD and I'm like, those poles
There's
don't
not
make
fishing
sense.
poles.
Yeah. Like I like that they're fishing at a beach. I don't know what they'll catch there, but um yeah, and then I noticed that there's actually some surfers and some people kayaking there. And so I thought that might be an interesting subject. So I started shooting um a bit closer to the water, but still I felt like this photo feels like, oh my God, stop it. Sorry.
Just wants to be a part of the
Oh
stream.
God, I know.
Can't blame them.
I just feel like I need to distract her with some toys or something. But yeah, this photo feels like I like that there's a human element, but it feels like you're almost taking a step back and looking at the view. You're not really immersed in that situation. So then I went closer, super close. Like I had my camera pretty much like touching the water. And immediately you already feel, I know.
Yeah, just the stress that went through my body is like just complete.
Look, this is why I use, and I'm sorry, Adobe, but I love Adobe, but this is why I use Canon because it's pretty much like a Nokia phone. It just doesn't, it works. And I'm really careless with my camera and it's still functioning. But anyway, so getting the camera really close to the water, and I feel like you immediately can feel like you're actually there, compared to, a shot like this where it's almost like, okay, this is just a cool shot. Whereas this one, it's like, oh, I'm kind of immersed in that situation. So again, once I found the angle I like, it's a matter of like the waiting game, right? It's a matter of like waiting for the perfectly shaped wave and perfect weather. So I remember shooting this and I was like, okay, there's not going to be a sunset, but a few seconds later, the sun kind of started shining through. You can kind of see the reflection on the building, which is really cool. And plus there's these surfers, which I thought was amazing. It's like, oh my God, this is like everything I want. But the surfers, the position of them just wasn't right for me. It's like me being OCD. So, I just waited again, just kept shooting. And the weather actually got better. You can see that, that glare is just ridiculous. And then I got this photo of this girl at kind of the perfect position that I want her to be, like she's kind of coming into frame. She's not at the center. She's not blocking the skyline in the background. So, I marked that right away and just kept on shooting more. But this is pretty much the banger shot, right?
Yeah.
For me.
It actually, I think we can all agree that this is a fantastic shot. And it brings us to two great questions. So first up, from Flynn again, typically how many shots would you take before feeling like you got the shot? So in this scene specifically, how many photos do you think you took?
This was okay, maybe 130. Yeah.
Wow.
And
not too many then.
Huh?
Not too many then.
No, not too many. So there's 130. And because I'm weird. I hate wasting space on my laptop. So like the moment I get home, I would import all my photos and then I delete the ones that I know that definitely don't work. So the 50 that you see here are kind of already shortlisted where I'm like, oh, maybe there's something there, maybe not. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's the way to do it, to not waste all your storage on your computer.
Yeah.
And then the other question we have was from Jessica, is what camera do you use the most? So using Canon, but do you have a go-to Canon camera?
I use a Canon 6D Mark II, and that's the only camera I have. Well, apart from drone and my phone. But yeah, I actually don't have that many gear. I only have one body and three lens, four, three or four lenses. Now it sounds like a lot.
Nice. No, I think it's great, knowing that you can create a lot with, not saying that you can create a lot with a little, but in kind of the same vein of you don't need
all the gear,
a trillion different things to,
yeah,
create great photographs. It is truly about being at the right place at the right time, and knowing then what to do with the photos that you then take. But we are at the 25-minute mark.
Oh wow.
So yeah, time does fly when you're having fun. So I was wondering, maybe we can go into some editing of photos.
Perfect.
Kind of take us through that process.
Yeah, I think let's just use this photo as an example. And then and after this, I can show you guys how I edit my kind of more night, neon city kind of shots.
Absolutely.
So with this shot, I think already the composition is kind of there. So I don't need to do too much in terms of, cleaning things up. Like I said, I'm quite OCD. So say when there's like, a speckle of just maybe, for example, like a plastic trash in the water, I would clean that up. So first off, this photo, the elements are there, but it's obviously quite crooked. So what I do is just straighten it and make sure it just, makes sense. Oh, and also one more thing is that whenever I post on Instagram, and I think a lot of people know this, is that I always post 4x5 vertical. And so like whenever I choose photos, that's also something I consider. So this, I think right now is 4x6, but it would still look good as a 4x5 just because we're cropping away some sky or some water.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, so, straightening the photo, and then first thing I do actually is I remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. I don't know why I do that. That's literally just what I do, and it kind of just works for me. So now that there's none of that kind of vignette from the lens, I can start kind of going into the details. So first off, the photo feels really flat. There's almost like a layer of gray on it. So I would just like tune the exposure a little, increase the contrast, press bring down the shadows, and then bring the whites up. And immediately you can kind of see, it's starting to feel a little better.
Yeah.
But so after I do kind of like an overall color grading or editing. Oh, also the photo looks a little green. So also, did you know that apparently female sees more colors than guys?
I did not know this. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was a bit blue and green, and I want to kind of bump up the fact that it was shot at sunset. So I would make it a bit more warm, maybe bring in a little more pink, but still trying to stay true to the actual like moment where I was there. And the thing with this photo, it's almost like two parts, right? There's the skyline here. Can you see my cursor?
Yes, we can.
Okay, there's the skyline there, and then there's the water here. So with the skyline, there's a lot of details that you can't really tell right now. And the thing with the water is that because the sun's not hitting the water, it feels really gray. So what I'll do is I'd use this, what do you call it? Gradient? Should know what these are called. Oh yeah, gradient. Oh my God, stop it. Gradient filter, to kind of bring up the details of the wave a little more, again, increasing that contrast a little, and perhaps even increasing clarity. Sometimes this doesn't work because then it starts to look like an HDR photo.
Yeah, we don't want that. No.
No, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Maybe people in the audience do. I don't know. And then just making that also a little more warm, just so that the whole picture feels like it's one thing and not like a composite. And then when you come to the skyline itself, this is for some reason my automatic, the exposure just goes up. When you come into the skyline itself, again, I want to bring in a bit more detail, perhaps even darkening the exposure a little bit. Shadow. And I mean, like if you are like a super detailed person, some people would actually go in there and like mask everything.
Mm.
I'm kind of just lazy.
No, I don't think it's lazy, because something that I noticed is just so far your process is, and in sort of in editing and taking the photos, like it's trying to get as much of, essentially trying to get everything right when you take the photo. So it's
Yeah.
taking lots of photos, finding the right elements and the right balance. But then in editing, it's really just like, okay, if if I see this being brighter or that being darker, and like when I took the photo, basically just editing to enhance what you saw, not
Yeah,
necessarily,
that's a good
um,
point.
super boosting the photo.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I actually used to be like, you know what, whatever, I'll just shoot it and then we can always fix it in post.
Mm,
But I think, and that's the great thing about working in advertising is that, these two, like advertising and photography, kind of merge into each other. And the thing I've learned from a lot of really amazing directors and photographers is that it's always better to shoot in camera. Like you can just tell for some reason whether something is shot in camera or fixed in post. So I think after that, that's when I realized that, okay, well, might as well, right? Like might as well shoot it properly. Um,
your dog agrees as well.
yeah, I'm so sorry. Let me just like
No,
distract her.
no,
Sorry, I'll be right back. Let me just
no
distract
worries at
her with a
all.
toy.
This is the wonders of a live stream, everyone, and also the wonders of pet ownership. So here you go. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat, just while you do that. Flynn was saying HDR photography was quite a trend several years ago. I'm sure it was, Flynn. And Moat of the Void says 100 plus photos sounds reasonable for many occasions with a lot of action. And select on import and done. A most
Not too
recent comment
much.
from Flynn is the pets are in charge, which I think is very accurate.
I'm so sorry.
And no,
Maybe.
please don't apologize at all. It makes the streams all the more exciting. And I think one more bigger question from YouTube. And if you're tuning in from YouTube, please hop on over to behance.net, because that's the chat that Flynn is monitoring, and that's where we most easily see your questions. But the question now from Oliver is, do you ever move to Photoshop for editing, even if you're not doing composites? So do you sort of go around in the Adobe suite, or do you stick to Lightroom?
Yeah, I used to only edit on Photoshop, and this was maybe 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone I talked to was like, why? It's like Lightroom is so much easier. And back then I was like, no, I'm doing great in Photoshop, like stop bothering me. And then I downloaded Lightroom and it's just like, oh my God, it's just so easy and so quick. So no, I don't edit, I guess like color grading in Photoshop, but I would go into Photoshop if, say, I'm trying to remove something or composite something that's so detailed that
Mm.
Lightroom might not be able to do. So what I usually do is always go into Lightroom first, right? Maybe. Well, it depends. Actually, no, that's a lie. It depends. Uh, but I do use Photoshop pretty much every day for my day job in advertising, like with mockups and everything.
Yeah.
And when I build my portfolio, say if I have a photo in a magazine spread, I would actually comp it into a magazine spread and then put it on my website. So the answer is no, I guess. But I do use a lot of the other creative suite like InDesign, Illustrator, Premiere Pro. Yeah.
Mm. Using everything that Adobe has to
Pretty
offer.
much.
We are now about, let's see, 10, 15 minutes left, if my math is right, which sometimes it isn't. 15 minutes, thank you, Flynn. So I was thinking maybe we can, if there's, do we have any more edits left on this photo?
I mean, look, this is we don't have much time, but this is a very, very quick kind of demonstration. But I guess you can kind of see that, wait, how do you do the split thing? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I should know this.
No, that's okay.
Before
We'll figure it out together.
Look, you get
There
it.
we go.
This was
Yeah.
this is another photo, but this is kind of like the original look, and then this is just from like a really, really quick edit.
Yeah.
Before uploading onto Instagram, there's a few other things that I would do. For example, like playing with the tone curve, playing with the hue saturation and luminance as well. But that's for next time.
Amazing, that's true. Because in that case, I was thinking maybe we can quickly go through the night photography,
yes.
and then round it out with some quick talk about social media as well, if we have time.
Yeah. So just really quickly with, night shots and cityscape shots, the thing is, for me, the biggest difference between like shooting in nature and shooting in city is that you actually have more license to play with color and light in the city setting. Whereas with nature, I feel like, when people change the color of the sky to like this turquoisey blue, it just looks so, edited, like that it doesn't look natural. Whereas a photo like this, for example, I can easily, tune it into something more cinematic, and perhaps even people say, what do you call it? Has like ghost in the shell. What's that word? There's a word for that. What's that word?
It's not steampunk.
No.
I know exactly what you're thinking.
Oh my
as
God.
well.
I think some people in the comment section might be able to help.
Yes, comment section, please help us. You're our only hope.
Oh God. Now I feel bad for not remembering that word.
Cyberpunk.
Right?
Yes, we got there.
Yes. Yeah. I guess, whenever you kind of see photos from Asia at night with neon, you kind of immediately think cyberpunk, and that's kind of like, just a direct get. But like I said, this is kind of the photo I shot, which is quite, okay. And this is the sort of edit that I would head towards to kind of like make it look a bit more cinematic and almost like out of the world. So let me just like reset everything. All right, that's the original. So again, for some reason, whenever I shoot, my face or my camera is just always crooked. So I just like
I think maybe our body just naturally leans a certain way when we're taking photos.
Yeah. So I would, again, straighten it. The whole image just is a bit dark, so I'd like brighten it a little bit, but making sure that middle bit that's a bit overexposed now doesn't look as overexposed. So I'd bring that back down a little, putting it down here. And I want this to have kind of that, highlighting those neon colors a little more. So I bring the temperature down. Making a photo look a bit more green immediately makes it feel like it's from the 70s or 80s. But
yes,
like right away, somehow it just looks like that. But that's not my bad.
No, I think that is a wonderful effect, and actually brings us to a very good question. How do you deal with mixed light sources? So especially taking night photography and photography with lots of neon, how do you sort of balance that, or the different light sources?
When you say different, as in like nature plus like neon, or
yeah, I think the way that I'm interpreting the question, and Merck, please let me know if we're thinking about this all wrong. But I think it's in terms of, you've got the lights from the neon at the top of the building, you've got lights from underneath the building, sort of making sure that they're all not too sort of overpowered.
Yeah, I think it kind of just comes down to composition. And to be really honest, this photo is busier than I'd like it to be. Let me just pull up this shot, which I think demonstrates it really well. This shot. So you've got kind of the light source from the sign itself, but then you also have the light source coming from inside the store. And then you also have this light source from here, which I just noticed. Oh my God, now that's gonna bother me. Now that I noticed it, I would probably go in and kind of darken that,
Mm,
just so that your focus is truly in this man and like, walking under the signage and not being distracted by anything else. And I think I remember specifically toning this part down as well, just so that there's a bit more focus in the shot.
mm.
Um, this, I suppose, is also like another kind of light source photo, which worked well to my benefit, which is the guy in the foreground. You see a bit of reflection in the glasses of his frame.
Mm.
The frame, yeah, frame of his glasses of his frame, yeah. But which kind of worked well because that almost added a little bit of romance to the photo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it kind of just comes down to composition and kind of what you fix in post, but more so from like a, helping people focus in the shot.
Just a quick note there, Elaine. If you could keep, I think you are doing it, but if you could just keep the screen sharing on.
Yep.
That's great
Sorry.
because behind the scenes it freaks out a little bit, but thank
Is it
you.
working now? Do you see my Lightroom?
Yes. Now
Okay, cool.
it's all back to
Cool.
normal.
And I think like with this shot itself, right? You see there's a light source here in the window.
Mm.
You see there's like this parking sign over here, which is quite annoying. So what I would do is I actually don't mind the window. It almost gives it a bit of texture on the top without just feeling like it's all black. But that parking sign does annoy me. So what I would probably do is I'd like crop in tighter and then go into Photoshop and removing that bit, just so that the whole kind of frame feels a bit clean. But anyway, I know we don't have much time, so I just quickly go through the basics. So like I said before, I'd start with like playing around with the basics over here. I'd like to bring in a bit more detail with the building in the background over there. So I add this kind of filter, this gradient filter. And then what I do is I go into hue, saturation, luminance. And this is what I mean by that kind of cyberpunk vibe. So, sometimes you can kind of just play around and making the blue a little more teal. And there's also this thing where, orange and teal is like a big color profile combination in the cinematic world. So
absolutely
could also kind of get into that. But again, there's kind of like a fine balance between where you want to take the shot. Right now, because I did this with the blue, it does feel a little too much. So it is all about just playing around and kind of working out what feels right for you. And the thing is, like, once I'm kind of done, and also this thing, and once I'm done with tuning all the colors, whether it's kind of just an overall broad one or kind of going into the specific details, I typically would actually start removing all these like little people, and just keep that one guy in there.
Yeah.
So it kind of just feels like he's, walking alone at home, kind of in this big city. It's kind of that scale that really tells the story. But I remember specifically that there's just too many people to remove. And I remember just like not doing it anyway, because I'm just like, okay, this is impossible. I did try. I did it in Photoshop. But I ended up just being like, you know what, this is just too much. And I just uploaded the photo anyway. So I'm a really bad example.
Choose your battles, I think, is a good lesson for this stream. But that said, we are very close to wrapping up. So do you have any I guess last minute additions that you want to cover?
I guess last minute addition is, you can't talk about Lightroom without talking about presets. So once I kind of, have an edit that I quite like, I would always just like go into here, add presets, perhaps it's like HK Neon, and it will kind of all be in here. So, it just makes it a lot easier for later on. It kind of creates some sort of consistency in your work as well. So you can see I've got one for some shots I've taken in Byron. I've got a generic forest one, which obviously doesn't work for this. And I've got just some, I don't know why I call this mushroom. I guess I took a photo of mushroom. Anyway. And then I've just got some other stuff, other presets I created for work. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We covered a lot, but I still feel that there's so much more to cover, which is always a great position to be in.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. Where
Thank
can
you.
people find you after the stream?
Follow my Instagram. It's at Lee Elaine, Lielaine. Or you can always reach out to me through DM, or I'm also on, I don't know, Clubhouse, LinkedIn, all the socials.
There you go. Fantastic. And I'm sure Flynn will post a link to that in chat. And if not, it will be posted to the Discord as well. Now, Elaine, if you can please keep your screen sharing on, I've been told, for the tech to continue working. But thank you once again so much for joining us. I hope you can be back with us again soon. And speaking of back, we'll be back with Jappy Agansilla tomorrow for more illustration stuff. But for now, thank you so much, Elaine, and hope you and your dog have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.